Hi, my name is Mackenzie Christensen, and I am part of the Daniel class this summer, and this is my final project. So what I did is I created lesson plans. I am an elementary ed major, and I am really interested in making lesson plans. So I thought this would be good for each chapter of Daniel. I made 12 lesson plans, so one for each chapter, and I was thinking that a Sunday school teacher could possibly use this. So what I did is I have all of the lesson plans and ideas for each lesson, like the activities, like pictures on the side. But what I was thinking is that I could kind of explain um, the lesson plans a little bit more in detail, especially the activities, so you kind of get more of a feel for an understanding of what the activities would actually include. So this is focused on grades 2 through 4, but can definitely be adapted for younger or older grades, but that's just like my specific focus. So Daniel chapter 1 is about the training in Babylon. So for each lesson, I have an objective, what you should read or what you should focus on. I pulled out specific verses that could be shortened or like in different sections so that it doesn't get overwhelming for the kids to read all at once. And I was thinking maybe you could have volunteers read them so that you're not doing all the reading either. But it's up to you. And then for the discussions section, it's kind of has ideas to what you should talk about during the lesson, as well as maybe like what you should ask the kids to get them kind of thinking and maybe answering. And then activities for the lesson, and then ultimately at the end there should be a prayer or something that you focus on from the lesson. And just I gave a couple ideas of what you could pray for the children in coordination to what they learn during the lesson. So I'll kind of go through this lesson plan, and then in the other ones I'll kind of just explain the activities. So for the objective, the children will understand the story of Daniel in chapter 1. They will recognize the importance of having obedience and strength in their faith to God because of the obedience that Daniel and his friends demonstrated. And then, obviously, I have for the read section, read different parts. And then for the discuss, how did Daniel and his friends not compromise their faith throughout various points in the chapter, regardless of the people, leaders, and the world around them? And that kind of correlates with the Together is Better game, which I'll get more in detail about. But the veggie tray snack is an idea that I got from Pinterest. Pinterest is a great resource, by the way, to get many activities for different lesson plans. Teachers use that all the time. But anyways, the veggie tray snack is a good relation to how Daniel ate veggies as well as fasted during part of this time. And then the bookmark making would entail yellow sheets of paper, and you could either have the markings already done, measured out for younger kids maybe, or if you don't have enough time, or have them do it too. With a ruler, you would measure 1/8, 1/4, 1/2, etc., maybe big markings, and then punch a hole in the end for the string, and then maybe have the hearts cut out and punched holes as well, just to save some time. And then what they would do is write on the heart or the back that I will measure up to God's standards. Just like Daniel and his friends did. They stood up and they always measured up to the standards that God had for them during this time. And then the prayer would include praying for the children that they would not compromise their faith, but that they would work together with other Christian friends to stand firm in what they believe in, which is a great transition into the Together is Better game. So what the kids do is you split them up into groups depending on how many kids you have, and you're going to have a stopwatch, and you're going to time each team. You're going to put them into teams and give them each a towel, and you're going to time them for how long it takes them without dropping the Beanie Baby to get across to the other side. So they're going to bounce it across, but they're going to see that they need to work together to both bounce it out across from the first person to the last person. And each team will take a turn, or maybe you can do it all at once, depending on what you feel. And then also you just pray that they have strength to stand strong in a sinful world, which obviously is better when you're working with people or working with other Christians that can stand strong with you, like Daniel and his friends, which is why I like the Together is Better game. So then for the other chapters and the other lesson plans, I'm just going to kind of go through their activities, and you can look more closely at the objectives and what you should read and what you should discuss and pray about. But I just want to explain the activities a little bit more. So for the activities for the Daniel chapter 2 about Nebuchadnezzar's dream about the statue, the ambassador cube is where the kids will get this template on the right side, and they would write out different locations that they are used to being at. So school, the ball field, maybe the park, maybe home, different locations on each of the sides, and then they're going to put the cube together, and they would take turns, either with partners or with the whole class, depending on the size of the class, and saying how they're ambassadors for Christ in those different ways. And in the discussion question, you obviously will see about how you have the discussion about what it means to be an ambassador for Christ, so you will already have that definition before you actually do this cube. Just how they can live for each, for God in each situation and each location that they're at. And then for the coloring page of the statue, you can either give the kids a coloring page that already has a statue on it, but I was thinking an even better idea is giving them a blank sheet of paper and kind of, when you read off the verses, kind of draw their own picture of what they think the statue looks like when you're describing it, just because we're not for sure from the Bible what the statue for sure looked like. We don't have like a for sure illustration. For Daniel chapter 3, the fiery furnace, I was thinking that you could have situation cards, and you can either make them up yourselves or use something like this. So one example is, your sister has been in the shower for a while, but you need to use the bathroom. What could you say to her? So kind of getting the children to think about situations that they might have at home or at school with their friends or at the ball field with their teammates, and how they can kind of think about how they can more be living for God and standing up for God in situations, and kind of making the right decision in what they should think about and ultimately act, so that they're living and lighting up the world for God. Kind of just like how Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego also made the choice to stand up for God. And then a reenactment of the ceremony. So I was thinking that you could have 3 people be Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Maybe one be Nebuchadnezzar. Maybe have it fun. Be one person try to be the statue. Everybody else be part of the crowd. And kind of just reenact the ceremony and how those 3 stood up. And then ultimately at the end, maybe have a review game where it reveals the final picture down in the bottom right-hand corner. Where you ask questions about the lesson or about the story, and if a student answers, they get to ultimately reveal part of the picture. So maybe you could have like a dark black piece of paper over it and maybe cut out like kind of pieces that each kid could take away one until they ultimately reveal the whole picture at the end. For Daniel chapter 4, Neb's insanity, for the activities, this is kind of about the humble and prideful person. So on the border on the wall, you could have one side being pride, one side be humility, and kind of describe them to the kids, and then help them put post-its up, one for each side, for what a person might do or say or act like for a prideful or a humble person, kind of for them to get a feel for how those people would be or act, and kind of what God probably wants us to be. Maybe have a discussion about that, how he wants us to be humble. And then each student will make a compliment and focus on others rather than focusing on themselves, so that they won't be prideful, but they ultimately will help them focus on other people and how to give them compliments. And then ultimately at the end, put them all together to make like a bouquet, or maybe you'll put them all up on the whiteboard or something on the wall. And then at the end, you could act out parts of the king's dream, kind of just like how the last one, it was a reenactment of the ceremony, but maybe act out parts of the king's dream for this one. And then Belshazzar's feast. This is about how he did not learn from the consequences of his grandfather, but he was also prideful. And so you could give each student a wiggly eye and glue that to an index card, and then have them write the memory verse, Daniel 5:22 to 23b, on the back or around it, however they like, and then kind of have a discussion about, can God see you everywhere, and how they should answer yes, and ask if you can hide from God, and ultimately hopefully they say no, and then just tell them to put this in a place that helps them remember, where God is always with them and God can see them, and hopefully that will be a good reminder. And then for the Jenga tower activity, this is where the tower will ultimately display that you are stronger with God, because then you'll have an index card that each kid will get one, and they'll be able to pull out a piece saying, like one of the index cards would say, I didn't read my Bible, then they'd pull out a piece, or I lied, and then they pull out a piece. Just things that kind of ultimately pull you away from God after you keep on doing them. And so ultimately, when they keep pulling out pieces, the tower is going to fall over, and you can kind of have a discussion about how a life without God is going to crumble. For Daniel chapter 6, the Lion's Den, have a writing activity about close friends, and how Daniel and God were just good friends, and how you can relate to that. And the things that they write about the good friend hopefully will also display that they can have that in relationship with Jesus. So that would be a good discussion too. That is part of the discussion, actually. And then the lion paper plate craft, and then write the key verse, Daniel 6:16, on the back. Or one important thing that they learned from the lesson, but you're going to make this cute paper plate lion. And then for the Dream of Four Beasts, for the activities, I was thinking that they could have each kid could have four balls of Play-Doh and create what they think the four beasts are like. So you would be reading the verses, and they would kind of be creating each of them. And then for the encouragement notes part of it, they can write an encouragement note or card to someone in the church. So maybe it's someone's family in the church, maybe it's a pastor, maybe it's a secretary, a deacon, elder, etc. But just helping to show that ultimately for this lesson that they are on the winning team, and that encouraging others helps others see that they're on the winning team of God too, and that they can trust God. For Daniel chapter 8, the vision of the ram and the goat, you can do a prediction game where Daniel had predictions of the vision because God gave them to them, but what you can do is write a sentence. It can be a silly sentence, it can be a sentence about anything, maybe a verse, and put it in an envelope, and have the students at the beginning of the lesson try to guess what's in that. And it's going to be very unlikely that anybody gets the exact sentence, word for word, and you can kind of have a discussion about how God gave Daniel that vision, but that doesn't mean that anybody can predict exactly what's going to happen. Only God knows the future. And then that's a good transition into the vision. And then the coloring page of the ram. And then they can write either also something that they learned from the lesson on the back, or also the memory verse, which is Daniel 8:19. And then for the Prayer 70 Weeks, Daniel chapter 9 lesson plan, you'd start out with the backpack, and the unconfessed sin illustration is where they're going to put things that represent unconfessed sins into the backpack. So you could have each kid put one in, and you could have an example of like lying, cheating, etc. put into the backpack, and how that's going to be a heavy weight on your shoulders when you're not confessing those sins, but when you're confessing them, you can take those things out. And then you're going to have a time of prayer, and quiet time will be the most of the lesson, so that each kid can journal or have that time reading their Bible and really focus on that prayer part of the lesson. And then for chapter 10, the intro to the final vision is the unseen things activity, where the kids will write things that are on the board that are unseen, so your lungs or your heart, etc. And then you'll talk about how the unseen world and God are still things that are real. And then the armor